Embora criticados por muitos em seus dias, os hippies são hoje chamados de libertadores, formadores de opinião. A inspiração por trás das mais poderosas tecnologias do século XXI, como os computadores Apple. Adictos, marginais e decadentes, ou um sinal de esperança para uma nação no limiar da destruição? Viaje por uma das mais eletrizantes eras da história americana vista pelos olhos de quem a viveu. Experimente a música, os momentos, a mensagem e descubra como uma tribo de idealistas chocou a mais poderosa nação do planeta e mudou o mundo de uma forma que jamais poderíamos imaginar. Hippies. Em janeiro de 1966, o distrito Haight-Ashbury, São Francisco, abrigava uma mistura de radicais, marginais, artistas e beatniks. Em 6 meses, o local seria o epicentro de uma explosão cultural e social sem precedentes no país.
It was a kind of an orgy of experiment. And by that I mean not just the drugs and not just the sex, but lifestyle experiments, experiments in art, experiments in political expression, how you express your disapproval of the policies that were being enacted by your government, whether it was the Vietnam War or other things, took on a new form.
De Haight-Ashbury, o movimento hippie se espalhou pela nação, agitando a geração Baby Boom. O combustível para essa quebra de convenções foi uma complexa mistura de política, economia e conflito entre gerações. Mas o que desencadeou o movimento foi uma nova e enigmática droga: dietilamida do ácido lisérgico, ou LSD.
Extremely powerful, mind-altering drug. The most powerful probably we know of it. Infinitesimal quantities needed to produce a huge change in the human mind. When she's 10 feet tall. LSD was initially created by Dr. Albert Hofmann, a very conservative, respected, if not brilliant chemist who was working at Sandoz Pharmaceuticals in Basel, Switzerland.
Os componentes com os quais o Dr. Hoffman estava trabalhando derivavam da ergotina, um fungo existente em grãos de centeio doentes. Na Idade Média, a substância era conhecida pelo nome de fogo de Santo Antônio, famosa por levar as pessoas ao delírio. O Dr. Hoffman estava interessado na habilidade do fungo de estimular a circulação.
He accidentally absorbed a tiny amount through his fingertips. In April of 1943 and had the first known LSD trip.
Mas não foi o suficiente. 3 dias depois, Hoffman ingeriu intencionalmente 250 microgramas da sua nova descoberta. No caminho para casa, em Basel, Hoffman teve a impressão de estar em uma montanha russa. Os edifícios respiravam e rostos transformavam-se em grotescas máscaras coloridas. Ele compartilhou as bizarras experiências com os colegas no laboratório, dando início à pesquisa sobre o potencial da droga. Em um experimento, um macaco que recebeu uma dose de LSD causou alvoroço entre os colegas símios com seu comportamento eufórico. Era um presságio do que estaria por vir. Mas a droga tinha propriedades que a tornavam interessantes para os psicoterapeutas. Eles acreditavam que, ministrado controladamente, o LSD permitiria a passagem irrestrita de pensamentos e emoções reprimidas para o consciente, onde tudo poderia ser analisado.
By the early 1960s, there was over 1,000 scientific papers, peer-reviewed scientific research, that had been written about LSD that were, in many cases, singing the praises in terms of its potential as a healing agent.
Muitas celebridades adotaram o LSD. O ídolo dos cinemas Cary Grant admitiu publicamente ter consumido LSD mais de 60 vezes durante seu tratamento contra alcoolismo e depressão. Mas nem todos os que pesquisavam a droga estavam interessados nas propriedades curativas.
It's kind of ironic, but the same drug that was embraced by hippies in the 1960s as a religious sacrament, LSD, of course, we're talking about, had been embraced 10 years earlier, maybe even 15 years earlier, by the Central Intelligence Agency, by America's spy agency, not as a sacrament, but as a weapon.
Inspirada pelo registro de experimentos nazistas de lavagem cerebral no campo de concentração de Dachau, a CIA iniciou uma intensa pesquisa sobre o potencial do LSD como soro da verdade e agente controlador da mente. O programa foi chamado de MK-Ultra.
One of the things that the CIA was interested in terms of their research with drugs and other behavior modification techniques was this idea of a Manchurian candidate. One of the things that the CIA actually wanted to do was to create programmed assassins, to reprogram a person to get them to go out and kill somebody, sort of under automatic pilot conditions, if you will. Whether they actually did this sort of thing, we don't know. The documents are cut off at a certain point, but it's very clear that they were looking at this in a serious way. This is not just a movie script idea. This is something that the CIA seriously entertained.
No alvorecer dos anos 60, a comunidade terapeuta, a CIA e o exército americano patrocinavam programas de pesquisas do LSD em universidades e hospitais do país.
I did LSD legally at UCLA that first time, and it was with somebody next to me who I knew, who I felt was taking care of me. I didn't have to worry about anything, and it was really quite interesting.
Mas a ansiedade sobre a droga crescia. Há muito tempo, os pesquisadores se preocupavam com as consequências de um alucinógeno tão poderoso caindo em mãos erradas. Então, o jornal Harvard Crimson informou que o psicólogo e professor Timothy Leary estava conduzindo experimentos em grupo com a droga e que cubos de açúcar batizados com LSD circulavam livremente pelo campus.
We're not concerned with the drugs, although we're labeled in the public's mind perhaps as drug professors or people who are pushing LSD. We're not concerned with the drugs. We're mainly concerned with man's head. How can we use our own head? That's our personal search.
O próprio Leary teve problemas em manter-se longe do produto. Uma vez ele disse: se cuidadosamente preparada, uma sessão de sexo e LSD pode levar uma mulher a centenas de orgasmos. Os atos excêntricos de Leary lhe renderam a alcunha de o Papa da Droga. Mas foi o famoso autor Ken Kesey quem realmente ultrapassou os limites.
He was initially exposed to LSD as part of a government experiment through the Veterans Administration, which ultimately means the U.S. Army.
Eles testaram o LSD e drogas relacionadas em soldados e civis. Ken Kesey era parte de um experimento civil. Ele começou a trabalhar como enfermeiro noturno no Hospital dos Veteranos e tinha acesso à sala onde o LSD era armazenado. Sua interação com os pacientes da ala psiquiátrica serviu como inspiração para seu aclamado romance Um Estranho no Ninho. Com o lucro do livro, Kesey se transformou no Johnny Appleseed do ácido, determinado a espalhar a experiência psicodélica para o máximo de mentes receptivas possível.
He felt this was something that was almost like a person's birthright. A human being had a right to have this kind of experience. Human societies had been doing it since way back in primitive times in a ritual context.
Mas havia um problema. Em 1965, apesar de ainda ser legal, o LSD era difícil de obter. E para drogar o número de pessoas que Kesey tinha em mente, enormes quantidades seriam necessárias. Este é Owsley Stanley, antigo especialista em radar do exército, que se transformou em um mago da química. Stanley havia recentemente adaptado seu laboratório secreto de anfetamina para a produção de LSD. Ajudado por um grupo de iconoclastas desajustados chamado Merry Pranksters, Owsley e Kesey promoveram inúmeras festas à base de LSD com fins lucrativos ao longo da costa oeste.
We came up with a name for it, the acid test, we call these get-togethers.
It was a zone where you could come in the door and pay your 50 cents or your dollar or whatever, and there was a safe place to freak freely, as we called it in those days, and just twirl and dance. We had a strobe light set up and all sorts of liquid light show, very, very early crude versions of light shows.
A música própria para a expansão mental era tocada por uma jovem banda chamada The Warlocks, que depois se chamaria The Grateful Dead. Em questão de meses, Keesey e seu grupo apresentaram o LSD a mais pessoas do que todos os pesquisadores, Sia e Timothy Leary combinados. Mas o movimento hippie só foi lançado em Haight-Ashbury em 21 de janeiro de 1966. Nesse dia, o ácido lisérgico chegou a São Francisco como parte de um mega evento da mídia chamado The Trips Festival. Com 10 mil pagantes, o festival foi um sucesso. Houve até boatos sobre a realização de outra festa do ácido no Madison Square Garden, na cidade de Nova York. Mas o grande impacto do festival ocorreu na própria comunidade de Haight-Ashbury. Para a cidade da famosa ponte Golden Gate, os tempos de loucura só estavam começando. Em março de 1966, a revista Time fez uma reportagem sobre o crescente número de usuários de LSD nas grandes cidades.
There was interesting communities evolving in Los Angeles, New York. You also had in London, Amsterdam, and Europe. You had kind of psychedelic subcultures taking root. Nowhere did this whole psychedelic scene emerge with such vivid intensity to the point where it became an international phenomenon like it was in Haight-Ashbury.
If you're going to San Francisco, be sure to wear sunflowers in your hair.
You know, we all lived on Haight Street. Haight Street was the theater. You'd dress up, you'd go out every day, and the way you looked was part of your statement. And people were acting out their fantasies in real life.
Nos finais de semana, os moradores aglomeravam-se em auditórios como o The Avalon Ballroom e o The Fillmore para dançar em êxtase ao som de bandas locais como The Grateful Dead, The Jefferson Airplane e a Big Brother and the Holding Company, que apresentavam uma jovem cantora de blues chamada Janis Joplin. Dopadas como a plateia, as bandas jogavam LSD para a multidão e tocavam acordes hipnotizadores que podiam durar horas. Esse novo estilo musical foi batizado de acid rock.
Travel the universe through that and go through a scary trip, and then they would bring you back down at the end of the concert with some good old songs, and so you'd end on a positive note all the time.
As drogas, em especial a maconha e o LSD, eram onipresentes e lucrativas. Haight-Ashbury tornou-se o primeiro supermercado psicodélico do mundo, o centro do tráfico de drogas de todo o norte da Califórnia.
Haight-Ashbury was like heaven and hell, in my opinion. In a 2-mile square area, I think you could arrest everyone on the street for using drugs. And people were going around and handing out drugs to each other. Some of it was just plain sugar, some of it was heavy-duty LSD.
Vendido ao preço de 4 centavos de dólar o micrograma, o LSD era 4.000 vezes mais valioso do que o ouro. Owsley Stanley, o maior fabricante e distribuidor da droga, ficou tão rico que foi chamado de o milionário do ácido pelo jornal LA Times. Mas para a crescente subcultura em Haight, drogas eram mais do que diversão.
For a lot of us, drugs were like ways of breaking through to the other side, pushing ourselves harder and farther than we thought possible to try to come up with a culture that was more humane and more livable.
As drogas também afrouxaram os nós da repressão. O sexo livre levou à quebra de antigos tabus.
First of all, the outgrowth of a unique historical moment, the widespread use of the pill that allows people to have recreational sex, number one. But secondly, it's also part of this ethic of self-fulfillment, this belief that life was about being happy. It wasn't about conforming to what you believed other people wanted you to do.
Girls should be virgins until they're married and save yourself for your husband. Right. And I don't believe in that. I think that if you keep your virginity like that, it's like having a Christmas present. You just don't open it, you know. It's not where it's at.
Look, the hippies were interested in sex because everyone is. In all times and places throughout all of human history. I mean, the hippies didn't discover sex, right? You know, maybe it was different ways of doing it. It was ways of doing it more in public.
Em público, reservadamente, a qualquer hora e com qualquer um. Em Haight-Ashbury, o casamento deixou de ser uma condição para o sexo.
The idea was, it's my personal fulfillment that counts. If it feels good, I'm going to do it. If that means breaking up my marriage or living with somebody and even having babies without getting married, that's fine. If I break up my marriage, the kids will be fine because if I'm happy, they'll be happy. It led to terrible consequences. It led to bad consequences for the children, of course. Nothing was permanent. You couldn't count on anybody. That gave them such an emotional wound.
Enquanto o sexo, as drogas e o rock and roll eram mais do que suficientes para manter a maioria dos moradores de Haight-Ashbury ocupada, havia um grupo com ambições mais arrojadas. Eles se intitulavam The Diggers.
They took it upon themselves to feed everybody and would do barbecues down in the Panhandle, in Panhandle Park. And their barbecues consisted of meat they had boosted from the back of a Safeway truck.
Comida grátis era somente a atração inicial da Revolução Digger.
Free communes. There were apartments that people could live in. Because people were so transient, there was a pretty high turnover. There were about, at one time, more than 20 of these. Free pads. Free clothes at the free store.
We got medical students from UC Med Center to come down to the Digger Free Store on Wednesday nights, and they'd hold free clinics.
This was creating an alternative society, not just a revolutionary movement, an alternative society. It would be a free society, not materialistic, not just anti-materialistic, not materialistic.
No outono de 1966, Haight-Ashbury era uma cidade-estado semi-autônoma, com estilo de vida, cultura e jornal próprios. Havia até um sistema de serviços públicos gratuitos. Para alguns, a cidade representava mais do que isso. Era uma alternativa funcional para uma sociedade moralista, onde a conformidade fora substituída pela criatividade, a repressão pela liberdade emocional e sexual, e a guerra pela paz e o amor.
There's a long history of Americans thinking they could found a new civilization, found a new order, and this is a lot healthier way to do it than killing a lot of Indians. But it also unearthed all kinds of themes in American life that have been somewhat suppressed, like the idea of boundless freedom, the idea of finding some sort of utopian quality in life.
LSD amplified a sense of what was possible. Didn't always deliver, make good on the possibility, but it certainly created an awesome sense of possibility, and nowhere was that more vivid than in the Haight-Ashbury community in the mid-60s. A sense that almost anything's possible, a sense of we can take control, we can do it our way, and we can do it in a better way.
There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to enforce or not enforce. We're living our life as beautifully as we can.
A maioria dos californianos não concordava, mas Haight-Ashbury estava prestes a prosperar.
I don't know, I don't have words, man. That's all. I just have soul.
Por um tempo, o mundo Haight-Ashbury e o mundo moralista coexistiram em relativa paz. Mas no outono de 1966, a lua de mel acabou. No dia 6 de outubro, a Califórnia foi o primeiro estado a condenar a posse e a distribuição de LSD.
Drugs have been a problem in California for about a decade or more. There had been a number of deaths and other serious health problems from people using LSD.
Como os pesquisadores temiam, o uso não supervisionado do LSD gerou problemas. O Hospital Bellevue, em Nova York, informou que 75 pessoas haviam sido internadas no período de 12 meses com psicose aguda induzida pelo LSD. Muitos tinham surtos incontroláveis de violência, 2 tentaram cometer homicídio e 1 pulou na frente do metrô após ouvir uma voz na cabeça ordenando que fizesse isso.
There was a guy sitting over in the corner, and I came back about 4 hours later. He was still sitting in the corner, and I said, "What's going on with him?" And the group told me, and they just ignored him, that he thought he was an orange, and if you poked him, all the juices would run out of him. And what I'm saying, in effect, is there was a real enormous tolerance for psychosis.
Drugs are going to hurt you whether you take them for the right reason or the wrong reason. And there were all sorts of myths, which I think we thoroughly explored and came to believe are false, is that good people have good trips, bad people have bad trips. Well, we did a lot of research in this area. It turns out that drugs are bad for you. And we honestly didn't know that, and I don't think the culture as a whole knew this.
I think the most negative thing about the hippies was people making choices early in life that were going to have long-running consequences that they didn't fully appreciate. I mean, you were making mistakes that could be very serious mistakes, and you weren't going to discover that until you were down the road, and by then it's too late.
A despeito dos avisos, o mundo Haight-Ashbury continuava inabalado. No dia em que a lei contra o LSD entrou em vigor, uma multidão de 3.000 pessoas se reuniu no Parque Golden Gate. Na frente dos policiais, os manifestantes ingeriam LSD. A demonstração de coletividade blindou a comunidade Haight-Ashbury como nunca antes. Mas uma ameaça ainda maior surgia no horizonte. Em 8 de novembro de 1966, o conservador Ronald Reagan surpreendeu a nação ao vencer o então governador democrata da Califórnia. O governador eleito descreveu a área da Bahia como um antro do demônio e satirizou os moradores dizendo que se vestiam como Tarzan, tinham o cabelo da Jane e cheiravam como a Chita.
I remember Ronald Reagan talking about going by protest marches or protest demonstrations in which the participants were carrying signs that said, "Make love, not war," and he remarked that most of them looked like they weren't capable of doing either one.
Com o estilo de vida sob ameaça e o senso de justiça inflado pelos alucinógenos, os líderes da comunidade Haight-Ashbury decidiram tomar a ofensiva. Eles reuniram todas as facções e superestrelas da cultura jovem para um mega evento na mídia. O objetivo? Atrair a atenção do mundo para as maravilhas e benefícios da nova sociedade utópica. O espetáculo foi chamado The Human Being. Em uma entrevista com a imprensa, os líderes passaram a seguinte mensagem: deixe seus temores na porta, venha para o futuro. 3.000 pessoas eram esperadas, mais de 30.000 compareceram. Entre eles estava o poeta Allen Ginsberg, aclamado poeta dos Beats, rebeldes dos anos 50, cuja filosofia anti-autoritarismo pronunciou muito do que estava acontecendo em Haight-Ashbury. Também presente estava Jerry Rubin, um manifestante anti-guerra cuja retórica política de linha dura se perdeu na multidão de espírito livre. E também o próprio Papa das Drogas, Timothy Leary, assulando a multidão a ficar atenta, interagir e ser confiante. A demissão de Harvard devido aos abusos com LSD fez de Leary uma figura nacional. Ele agora estava promovendo a Liga do Desenvolvimento Espiritual, uma seita cujo sacramento sagrado era o ácido.
He reminded me of a cross between a godlike figure and a used car salesman, and I could never quite figure out where the actual man was.
Tão notáveis quanto os que falavam ao microfone eram os que ignoravam as normas de segurança. Os Hell Angels, ou Anjos do Inferno, volúveis, racistas e extrema-direita, os Angels atacaram um encontro de paz em Berkeley em 1965 em conluio secreto com a polícia de Oakland. Mas os Angels tinham duas coisas em comum com a comunidade Haight. Eles odiavam a autoridade e amavam drogas.
They had a code that if one Hell's Angel was insulted, they would all join together and beat the shit out of whoever the person was who said the wrong thing. One of them came up to me at one point. I was interviewing someone and he asked me for $1, and I didn't hesitate. I gave him $1.
They became a sort of adjunct to the hippie scene. Strangely, they took on the role of being the security force.
No dia do evento Be-In, havia pouca necessidade de se manter a paz. As pessoas dançavam ao som dos Dead and the Airplane e viajavam com o LSD que os Diggers haviam colocado nos sanduíches gratuitos.
By the time the day was over, everybody was loaded. Everybody was hallucinating. But also, you know, everybody was in paradise.
O evento Human Be-In foi o paraíso para a imprensa também. Quase todos os meios da mídia, incluindo 3 emissoras de televisão, exibiram a revolução do novo estilo de vida mostrado no evento. Subitamente, a comunidade Haight era o foco das atenções do mundo.
I mean, that's where a lot of energy came together and vibrated and then moved out to the country and around, you know, like a big Certs commercial or something.
The media amplified the weirdness that they could get, which was superficial. And what they amplified became sort of part of a stock footage that they could run. There's something bizarre going on in the world. And indeed, there was something extremely bizarre going on in the world, but the fiber of it was generally missing, and the freakiness of the show was what went out into circulation.
That's what the cameras would pick up, but the conversations that hippies had usually was never filmed, and media never got it. So what was really the internal part of what hippies were thinking and doing, since they were so diverse, such different people, was often not captured.
Remember, throughout this whole hippie period, you're having magazine articles being done on the hippies. Time, Life, Newsweek, covers, big spreads. And who is putting those magazine articles together? Are hippies writing those articles? Are hippies the editors at the magazines picking the pictures? No, it's older people doing it, mostly men. So they're looking at all the pictures of the cute, naked hippie chicks, and they're the ones picking those pictures for the magazines. So there's also a lot of voyeurism going on, intergenerational voyeurism.
A opinião pública dividia-se de acordo com as gerações.
Well, I think mainstream America, looking at, bearded people,
looking at people who seem to have not just indifference, but almost a contempt for moral standards, for traditional American values. We're totally shocked first, then repelled by them. They were just too counter the culture.
You get kind of this parental fear that, you know, boy, I don't want my kid going down that road.
Mas para os filhos, estas mesmas imagens surtiam um efeito contrário.
If you were living in Nebraska or in Iowa, what you saw was a picture of two kids living on their own without parents, smoking cigarettes, dressing how they wanted, doing what they wanted. You went, ding, that's for me.
O evento Be In atingiu o objetivo. Haight-Ashbury e sua sociedade utópica capturaram a imaginação de uma geração agitada. A revolução hippie havia começado. Na primavera de 1967, o movimento Flower Power encontrava-se em plena expansão. Adolescentes da geração Baby Boom adotavam os símbolos e estilos mostrados no evento Human Being para expressar a desaprovação com relação aos pais e à sociedade americana em geral.
There was a sense among young people in the 1960s that they were dissatisfied with the world that their parents had made, and they were looking for ways of creating an alternative. The hippies defined what that alternative was.
Considerando que cresceram como beneficiários da maior expansão econômica da história moderna, é difícil saber exatamente o que desagradava a geração Baby Boom. Após a vitória dos aliados na Segunda Guerra Mundial, os Estados Unidos, com apenas 6% da população mundial, produzia quase a metade dos bens de consumo do planeta.
I really felt that if I did well in school, I worked hard, it was going to be, pretty easy to make a living. I was optimistic about my country and my culture. I thought it was, it was based on merit and hard work. I guess I was proud of who I was proud of my family. My father had been, writing and publishing since 1952 and not really making a living at it. Kurt became famous later, so there was certainly some struggle involved, but it was all very optimistic.
Mas sob a superfície brilhante e reluzente, os problemas cresciam. Por trás da expansão, havia a mentalidade de que tudo era possível, trazida pelos soldados americanos dos campos de batalha na Europa e na Ásia. Com um general condecorado na Casa Branca e o trabalho e a dedicação do povo, a Terra da Liberdade tornou-se o lar da burocracia, organização e conformidade.
It was like living in a straitjacket. You had one career track. You just had to do it the way it was supposed to be done. And there was a sense of rebelling against those rules.
The truth is, a huge number of the best and the brightest and the hardest working people in my generation felt compelled to try to find an alternative. It was looking for a way to live and still be able to feel good about yourself.
Frustration never disappears. Human beings will always find reasons to be frustrated, good and bad. But even the frustration itself is going to be huge if it's baby boomers doing it, because there are just so damn many of them.
À medida que o movimento se expandia, mini-comunidades Haight-Ashbury surgiam da Flórida a Seattle. Os episódios psicodélicos criados paralelos ao movimento atraíam como imãs os interessados na subcultura. No bairro East Village, em Nova York, o cenário era intelectual e as drogas usadas eram a heroína e a metadrina, conhecida por speed. Em Los Angeles, os hippies aglomeravam-se nos clubes da Sunset Strip, dançando junto às estrelas de cinema e poderosos de Hollywood. Em Londres, o cenário era moderno e carregado de LSD. Londres tinha até o próprio Timothy Leary, na figura do romancista Aldous Huxley. Huxley, autor da clássica fantasia anti-utópica Brave New World, estava tão dependente das drogas que foi preciso ministrar-lhe a heroína na veia enquanto ele jazia para morrer. Mas a meca dos hippies foi o lugar onde tudo começou, São Francisco. Os turistas chegavam em profusão. Muitos fechavam as janelas dos carros e trancavam as portas como se estivessem passando por uma reserva selvagem.
We became freaks, you know, that people came with their cameras to take our picture, you know.
No dia 5 de abril de 1967, a companhia de ônibus Grey Line promoveu a primeira excursão hip hop pelo distrito Haight-Ashbury. O passeio foi chamado de Safari pela Psicodélfia e o único passeio internacional dentro dos Estados Unidos.
Normally, you'd have people from all around the world. First thing they wanted to know, do we see the Haight-Ashbury? One time I had a group of young people moon the bus. You know, that was kind of a shocker for people thinking, you know, San Francisco has it all.
Cansados da multidão e do constante assédio, os moradores de Haight-Ashbury começaram a revidar.
They'd stop the buses and they'd extort money to let them go through the streets there. So we did have to put a stop to that.
They did a lot of street clearing and, you know, trying to arrest as many people as possible. So it got very uncomfortable there.
Mas o pior ainda estava por vir. Jovens de todas as partes da nação convergiam para São Francisco.
Kids were showing up, just hundreds and hundreds a day.
Some of these people were coming from down and out situations, from broken home. They're difficult situations they were running away from. For whatever reasons they were running away, They get to the Haight-Ashbury, penniless, no way to earn an income. There's no jobs when you have thousands and thousands of people coming from out of town. What are they going to do? They're living off the streets, they're hungry, they're down and out, they're taking these very powerful mind-altering drugs. It was a pretty rough street scene.
I saw a lot of young kids getting taken advantage of by older kids because it was, you know, a predatory environment. They went through some unsavory areas and frequently got picked clean by the native inhabitants before they got to Haight-Ashbury.
Mulheres jovens eram especialmente vulneráveis.
It was a sad thing to see these lives destroyed, not only with voluntary sexual intercourse, but there would be the predators like the pimps who would try and get these young girls to work for them.
Durante o chamado Verão do Amor, o número de pessoas aumentou vertiginosamente, passando de 100 mil.
The sort of budding community of the Haight, I would say, crumpled under the onslaught of thousands of kids with no place to go.
A necessidade mais crítica era a de cuidados médicos.
The kids would come out here, you know, thinking it's summer in California, you know, San Francisco, bare feet, and it's cold. We were really warning the runaways, this is not a place to come to. It's evolved into a very, very hard drug scene. It's no longer fun and games.
Heroin became available, and a lot of amphetamine, drugs that really could damage people. When you start injecting drugs, you're spreading diseases.
I think one of the worst experiences I had was a young girl who had overdosed on heroin, and somebody had suggested that the antidote was to inject milk into her. And they did that. And we got her to the hospital, and she died some hours later. Probably would have died without that being injected into her.
As drogas ficavam mais perigosas e os traficantes também.
You had mainly gangsters moving in to control the drug trade, and that was really what sowed the beginnings of the end of the Haight.
A distância entre Haight-Ashbury e os dias de paz e amor foi evidenciada pelo homicídio do Super Spade, um dos traficantes de Owsley. Ele foi baleado na nuca, colocado em um saco de dormir e jogado de um penhasco.
That's what the police see. The scene is everybody's happy, love is there. It's wonderful, it's nice, but we get to clean up the mess after it's over.
No dia 6 de outubro de 1967, exatamente um ano após a lei californiana contra o LSD entrar em vigor, uma procissão solene tomou as ruas de Haight-Ashbury, levando um caixão com rosários, cartazes, pedindo paz e flores. Os Diggers chamaram o evento de A Morte do Hippie. O sonho utópico da comunidade Haight acabara devido às drogas e ao sensacionalismo da mídia. Mas o movimento oriundo do sonho ainda estava vivo e rumando para o leste. Desde a estreia nos Estados Unidos em fevereiro de 1964, os Beatles se tornaram a banda mais famosa do planeta. Mas em 1967, isso deixou de ser suficiente. Nesses 3 anos, a sofisticação musical do grupo cresceu exponencialmente, assim como o interesse por drogas. Já no início, a banda utilizava anfetaminas e barbituratos para suportar as longas noites de shows nos clubes noturnos de Liverpool e Munique. Então vieram os alucinógenos. Apresentados à maconha pelo colega e ícone hippie Bob Dylan, os Beatles passaram a consumir LSD e produziram a maior obra-prima da era psicodélica, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
All of a sudden, the Beatles are doing the hippie thing. It was just like, a free advertisement for all this stuff. When they let their hair down, so to speak, it was a huge boost to this whole scene.
A banda estava voando alto, talvez alto demais. John Lennon, segundo a própria estimativa, consumiu LSD mais de 1000 vezes. Em uma ocasião, ele reuniu o grupo com o simples propósito de informá-los de que era Jesus Cristo. George Harrison, como Lennon, já havia tomado sua cota de ácido. Mas uma visita a Haight-Ashbury durante o desastroso verão do amor o convenceu de que o LSD não era o caminho. Eu esperava que fossem todos gentis, limpos, amigáveis e felizes, diria Harrison mais tarde. Eles são um bando terrível de adolescentes.
When he got there, it didn't really match the idealized vision that they may have had, because again, you had a lot of down and out young kids on the street. It degenerated by the time the Summer of Love rolled around. And I think when George Harrison saw that, it was an impetus in part for his interest in turning away from drugs per se.
O Beatle Pacífico uniu-se ao crescente grupo de hippies procurando a elevação espiritual sem os efeitos colaterais destruidores do LSD.
They sought to almost recreate the LSD experience or aspects of it through other natural means.
Harrison encontrou o que procurava em Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
He had a pretty straightforward Hindu approach, except that he moved in rather aristocratic right-wing circles in India, and he was generally frowned upon by many of the ashram leaders because he charged for his services, whereas traditionally in India it's always free.
O Maharishi prometeu a consciência cósmica, um estado de elevação psíquica sem o uso de drogas. Logo, os Beatles, Donovan e outros astros de cabelos compridos estavam praticando um tipo especial de yoga Maharishi, conhecido como meditação transcendental ou MT.
So for a little while they were his great advocates, and as soon as they became interested, of course, then the Beach Boys and everybody else became interested.
7 meses depois, os Beatles e Maharishi se separaram. Mas o sorridente guru já havia conquistado sua posição no meio hippie, abrindo caminho para uma multidão de místicos asiáticos, swamis e xamãs.
A lot of people became interested in spiritual matters, usually Eastern rather than Western.
A adoção do místico sempre foi parte da subcultura, uma reação à prática religiosa formal da geração dos pais.
I think there was a huge vacuum, and so into this vacuum we went searching.
There was a revolt against reason. Many people felt that reason led to destruction, led to war, led to blandness, led to cultural suffocation, led to the suppression of the body in the name of the mind. I'm not saying that these were all well worked out ideas, but they were impulses that many people acted on. And one way to act on them is to go elsewhere for inspiration. You could think of it as a gigantic crapshoot.
I think a lot of hippie spirituality was a crock. I mean, they were taking some very serious stuff from foreign cultures, often Asian cultures, you know, Zen from Japan and China, things from India, and they were debasing it, misunderstanding it, just grabbing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Now, on the other hand, that is a very old American habit. I mean, Thoreau and Emerson were picking up tidbits from India back in the 1840s. So Americans have been doing this for a long time.
A maioria dos rituais místicos dos hippies era considerada inofensiva e até atrativa. Mas o mesmo não ocorria com o voodoo e a feitiçaria. As estrelas do rock, em particular, cansadas do assédio e do consumo exagerado de drogas, foram atraídas para o lado negro. O líder do The Doors, o cantor Jim Morrison, que se intitulava o Lagarto Rei e o Senhor Magia Crescente, era fã do lendário mestre das artes negras Aleister Crowley. Assim como os Beatles, que colocaram sua imagem na capa do disco Sgt. Pepper's. Crowley nasceu em 12 de outubro de 1875. Ele foi chamado de o homem mais perverso do mundo devido à prática de rituais satânicos, pansexualismo e suposto apoio ao sacrifício de crianças. Outro admirador de Crowley era Anton LaVey, fundador da primeira igreja satânica do mundo. LaVey, antigo domador de leões e fotógrafo da polícia, tinha tantos seguidores entre os ocultistas hippies e celebridades hollywoodianas que foi escalado para o papel de demônio no filme O Bebê de Rosemary, de Roman Polanski. Uma vez, enquanto ministrava um seminário sobre canibalismo em sua mansão em São Francisco, LaVey serviu carne humana real, a coxa de uma jovem doada por um médico local.
By setting at naught all of the conventions of the larger society, feel that they are becoming God. And, you know, so this was a kind of language you could talk in more religious ages. But they very often ended up doing acts of violence because, in a way, the more you transgress the conventions, the more the proof is that you are special.
Mas o personagem mais demoníaco de todos vivia a poucos quarteirões dali, em Haight-Ashbury.
And I remember one experience at the Haight-Ashbury Clinic, which was kind of fascinating to me when I talk about the hellish side. A guy came in with 3 hippie-type women in shifts with nothing underneath, which was the dress code of the period. And he was a little guy, and he started to insult the doctor who had a peace symbol around his neck. And I remember he got very ferocious, and he said, "You motherfuckers, you don't know what you're doing." When I later saw a picture of him on the front page of the LA Times, it was Charlie Manson.
Mason era um criminoso perigoso que já estuprara um colega de cela sob a ameaça de uma navalha. Após a soltura, ele se mudou para Haight-Ashbury para reinventar-se como cantor e compositor hippie. Ele conquistou amigos poderosos no meio musical, como o baterista dos Beach Boys Dennis Wilson e Neil Young do Crosby, Stills, Nash Young fame, que mais tarde lembrou: ele era ótimo e real, muito bom. Mas os verdadeiros talentos de Manson não tinham nada a ver com a música.
He gathers around him a kind of a harem of young women, very impressionable. Again, these street kids who are blowing their minds, and he becomes the dictator. He was a totalitarian personality, and he really kind of preyed upon people who were very open, very vulnerable as a result of their drug experiences. When a person is under the influence of LSD, they become very sensitive, very susceptible and vulnerable to manipulative personalities.
Ele adaptava os desejos de suas lindas ajudantes aos seus através de uma combinação de LSD, lições de cientologia e um incrível apetite sexual. Segundo as garotas de Manson, ele fazia amor com uma ou com outra pelo menos 7 vezes ao dia, antes e após cada refeição e mais uma vez no meio da noite.
What it taught me is that when you have a cult leader that is disturbed for whatever reason, and he has control over the minds of young people, that they can lead them to very bad things.
No dia 7 de outubro de 1967, os corpos ensanguentados de 2 jovens hippies foram descobertos em um apartamento de classe baixa próximo à Praça Tompkins, em Nova York. Linda Fitzpatrick era a filha de um rico comerciante de especiarias de Connecticut. James Groovy Hutchinson era um traficante de maconha que, na maioria das vezes, fornecia drogas de graça. Linda e Groovy estavam em uma festa no bairro East Village, quando os assassinos, ambos afro-americanos, atraíram o casal para o porão usando LSD como isca. As vítimas foram atingidas na cabeça com um tijolo embrulhado em um casaco. O assassinato dos Groovy, assim chamado pelos tabloides, resultou na crescente onda de violência gerada pela guerra entre os hippies e a minoria representada pelos seus vizinhos. Os hippies geralmente se alojavam na área pobre da cidade, onde os aluguéis são mais baratos. Normalmente, para os batalhadores residentes desses bairros, a chegada de jovens cabeludos de classe média significava aluguéis maiores, mendigos e traficantes.
I won't say a lot, but a portion of the people who lived in that community did not like hippies. Some hippies were very dirty. Some were mentally ill, some were drunks, some were heavy drug users, bad drugs.
Here was the real catastrophe. If you look at all of the statistics on black Americans, everything was getting better. And blacks were succeeding. And then, bam, comes this cultural revolution. You cannot, if you were at the bottom of society, let it all hang out, tune in, turn on, and drop out. That was an absolute recipe for failure. And it was disastrous for black America.
À medida que a tensão aumentava, os jovens Mayflower reclamavam de roubos e espancamentos constantes. As mulheres hippies eram ofendidas e molestadas. Para se proteger, alguns hippies começaram a fazer o improvável: portar armas. Outros fugiram para encontrar o sonho utópico em outro lugar. Em 1968, milhares de hippies haviam migrado para áreas rurais visando ficar mais próximo da natureza e o mais longe possível da corrupção e do perigo da selva de concreto e da sociedade americana.
It was that fantasy that lay behind the hippies and their communes. The idea was it's a sort of conventionalized, uptight society that makes for crime, makes for war. This idea that we are closer to nature, we are the way natural men would be if not tainted and corrupted by society.
We really felt like we were on the threshold of a new beginning.
Embora cada comunidade fosse diferente em estilo, muitas procuravam equilibrar necessidades espirituais e materiais, consumindo produtos orgânicos e naturais no lugar daqueles industrializados e sintéticos.
We actually did try to live the way early Christians lived, and lived according to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, judge not lest you be judged, etc., etc. And that was all part of it. Everybody worked hard, whether they were making firewood or building the house or whatever. It felt so good to be able to work all day.
I loved living communally. I enjoyed it because I enjoyed sharing and working cooperatively with people. And that's what that commune meant to me, that I never really had problems. And I always wanted to continue living that way.
Everybody's money went into the pot, so we shared the money, whatever money was coming in. The welfare checks went into the pot, everything went into the pot.
O dinheiro não era a única coisa compartilhada. Em algumas comunidades, os recém-chegados eram avisados de que os parceiros sexuais deveriam ser igualmente partilhados.
All 60 people slept in the same room, and then the children slept in another room. So there was a lot of exchanges of partners that went on during that time.
There have been a lot of experiments like this in the course of human history. You know, there was famously Brook Farm just outside Boston in the 1840s. The fact is, people are possessive. People get sexually jealous. And out of these communes in the past have come a tremendous amount of disharmony.
Viver fora das normas da sociedade foi difícil para os jovens, mas eram as crianças que corriam o maior risco.
In one commune where I was interviewing the parents and their 5-year-old child was really having what I considered to be a kind of a psychotic episode. They were sort of screaming and yelling, and one would wonder why they would impose that acid on their child. In my interview, I clearly recall their rationalization was, acid is beautiful. It's good for everyone.
Dos erros mais comuns que levou a maioria das comunidades ao fracasso foi subestimar a complexidade da vida simples.
It was a grand adventure, but I don't think we knew what it would be like day after day to just spend facing ourselves and how annoying we could become to each other.
We looked around one day and there were 3 of us left. People left for different reasons. People went off in their own relationships. And it just kind of dissipated. And I stayed here because I actually like living in this town.
Enquanto alguns hippies fugiam para o campo visando criar uma comunidade pacífica, outros continuavam a luta nas cidades. Em 1968, a nação estava pendendo perigosamente para o caos. Os primeiros 6 meses de 1968 foram os mais devastadores da história dos Estados Unidos. Em 30 de janeiro, a ofensiva Tet levou à morte mais de 2.000 soldados americanos, a despeito das previsões do exército de que a guerra estava para terminar. Em 31 de março, com o apoio à guerra se esvaindo, o presidente Lyndon Johnson anunciou que não se candidataria à reeleição. de abril, Martin Luther King foi baleado em Memphis, dando início ao maior conflito nacional desde a Guerra Civil. Em 4 de junho, o candidato da paz Robert Kennedy foi assassinado.
The same things that confused us, the war in Vietnam, the death of Kennedy's, Martin Luther King, the violence, all of that stuff also devastated our parents. And they really didn't know what to tell us. We were all sort of in it together, trying to figure out what happens next. We certainly did not feel safe. I would not have felt safe taking pre-med courses and getting ready to go to med school. I would have felt like I was not responding to reality as it was.
The political scene in America in 1968 was crazy and poisonous. You had racial problems that were following what seemed to be racial promise. You had a war, and you had opposition to that war. You had a convergence of two very difficult things, and they amplified each other.
Protestos contra e a favor da guerra tornavam-se cada vez mais violentos.
Hate the war, hate the politicians who got us into the war, but don't hate the soldier who's fighting it, because he's fighting it because he believes in the principle of your country.
Os hippies e seus mantras de paz e amor eram quase invariavelmente a favor dos direitos civis e contra a guerra. Mas sua abordagem, liberte a mente primeiro para depois mudar o mundo, colocou-os em conflito com grupos anti-guerra como o movimento Estudantes para uma Sociedade Democrática, que defendia o confronto direto com o poder.
The hippies were also, in many ways, in revolt against politics, including radical politics. And the divisions and tensions between the, roughly speaking, hippies and roughly speaking politicos in the mid-60s, those divisions were very intense. But don't get the idea that these are like two separate teams, you know, they're sort of the blues and the reds, or, you know, nobody was wearing uniforms that said hippie or politico, and there was a fair amount of traffic across the boundary.
A interação era tão grande que alguns esquerdistas teorizavam que os hippies resultaram de uma conspiração da CIA para neutralizar o movimento anti-guerra através do LSD, transformando os manifestantes em uma massa de adictos. Independente de suas origens, alguns hippies estavam resolvidos a se fazer ouvir.
One of the most interesting things about the hippie approach to political activity was that they brought a level of humor and levity to it that you wouldn't find in a normal old left demonstration of some sort.
O principal exemplo desse marxismo hilário foi o hino anti-guerra criado por Country Joe McDonald, um ex-fuzileiro que se tornou roqueiro.
In 20, 30 minutes I wrote I Feel Like I'm Fixing to Die Rag with the chorus and the words. I think I could write it because I was in the Navy. I had a military experience and I wasn't mystified by the military or war at all.
We're all gonna die. Come on, Wall Street, and don't be slow, man.
O que mais incomodava os militares era a nova amostra de ativismo hippie, o exorcismo do Pentágono.
There was an anti-war march in October 1967 at the Pentagon, where young people, about 50,000, and older people too, surround the Pentagon, and some proceeded to try to exorcise the Pentagon, levitate it. Of course, they didn't really do that, but that was sort of the whimsical LSD-influenced feeling of protest. That's the way protest began to be expressed. It was very unique and unprecedented.
Embora tenham falhado em levitar a enorme estrutura de concreto, eles conseguiram propagar o movimento de paz.
And this, of course, is when you have the famous images of the National Guard standing up with their bayonets fixed and anti-war demonstrators pushing flowers down the barrels of the gun, which is a very, very powerful image. That picture really expresses the whole innocence of that period, the idea that love and peace can conquer the war machine. It's very sad that it's not the case.
Entre os que participaram do protesto no Pentágono estava Abe Hoffman, organizador de uma comunidade sediada em Nova York, e Jerry Rubin, ex-ativista de Berkeley e orador do evento Be In. Ambos buscavam maneiras de envolver os hippies mais ativamente no movimento de paz. Eles uniram forças e, junto com o humorista Paul Krasner, formaram o Partido Nacional da Juventude, ou Hippies em inglês.
Through their kind of expressive theatrical side, use the media to show kids who are in the counterculture who might not be very political how insane society was.
It looked like fun. You know, becoming a yippie was replaced running away with the circus. And it was the same with the Merry Pranksters. It looked like fun, and it was fun. And what people learned from this was that responsibility can be fun.
Com a aproximação do verão de 1968, os hippies viram o que prometia ser o maior confronto político da década, a Convenção Democrática de 1968. Com Johnson fora da disputa e Kennedy morto, radicais de todos os tipos viam o futuro do partido como incerto e a convenção como um campo de batalha pela alma da América. Para pranksters como Jerry Rubin e Abe Hoffman, era a hora de agir.
Mayor Daley viewed the Yippies particularly disfavorably. Young people who had never worked an honest day in their lives. They organized the Festival of Life here in Lincoln Park that he viewed essentially as orgy.
Embora a cidade negasse a permissão para o evento, os hippies recusavam-se a ceder.
I was getting bad vibes. I thought it was going to be a massacre. They were going to just kick our friggin' ass at the Democratic Convention.
Somente 10 mil pessoas compareceram, mas o cenário era propício para o desastre. Conflitos entre a polícia e os manifestantes eclodiram durante a convenção, culminando em um tumulto em frente ao hotel onde estava o democrata nomeado, o vice-presidente Hubert Humphrey. Quando a convenção terminou, mais de 1.000 manifestantes estavam feridos e um havia morrido.
The song, If You're Coming to San Francisco, Put Flowers in Your Hair, became If You're Coming to Chicago, Wear a Helmet.
Rubin admitiu depois ter provocado intencionalmente a contenda para expor as táticas da Gestapo empregadas pela polícia e ganhar apoio para a causa hippie. Mas o plano surtiu efeito contrário. Emissoras da nação inteira exibiam reportagens sobre a convenção. A maioria das imagens mostrava hippies de cabelos compridos criando distúrbios na cidade.
For many people who even had some sympathy for the spirit of the challenge to authority, and for the hippies in particular, it really dies that week in Chicago.
Após quase uma década de tumultos e resistência, protestos e eventos, hippies e hippies, o que a maioria dos americanos queria, acima de tudo, era lei e ordem. O homem eleito para essa missão foi o republicano Richard M. Nixon, que havia sido preparado para combater a subcultura.
Richard Billhouse Nixon do solemnly swear.
No dia 20 de janeiro de 1969, Richard Nixon foi nomeado o 37º presidente dos Estados Unidos. Uma de suas primeiras tarefas foi autorizar a Operação COINTELPRO, a guerra secreta do FBI contra dissidentes na América. Incluídos na longa lista de alvos estavam os chamados defensores de novos estilos de vida e os apóstolos da paz e da harmonia racial. Projetos de lei para a invasão de propriedade sem mandado foram enviados ao Congresso. Agentes infiltrados em grupos de subcultura reuniam informações e criavam conflitos. A preparação para missões sob disfarce exigia que os agentes tomassem LSD e deixassem de se banhar por dias. Mas, a despeito dos esforços da chamada maioria silenciosa, a influência hippie aumentava. Pesquisas nacionais mostravam que cada vez mais grupos sociais aderiam à subcultura e às drogas, especialmente à maconha. Em 1969, a venda de maconha chegou à cifra de 100 milhões de dólares por ano. Banqueiros, médicos e até policiais deixaram os cabelos crescer. Havia perucas, barbas e bigodes postiços para quem quisesse ficar arrumado no trabalho e ter uma aparência diferente no fim de semana.
Everybody could wear long hair. It was no longer, allied with a single statement.
Para completar as vestes subculturais, os homens usavam camisas coloridas, colares, casacos de pele e bolsas a tiracolo. A moda feminina consistia de cores e padrões psicodélicos e o abandono do uso de sutiãs. O mundo dos espetáculos também se adaptou rápido. A Broadway exibia Hair, um musical de amor tribal, e Rock, uma tentativa do produtor Michael Butler de incutir a mensagem dos hippies na mentalidade americana.
I'm Peter Fonda. We've just finished making a movie dealing with the most talked about subject of the day, LSD.
Nos cinemas havia filmes baratos como The Trip, com efeitos especiais inspirados pelo LSD e muitas jovens hippies.
Of pleasures possess you.
Estrelando Peter Fonda e Dennis Hopper e escrito pelo ainda anônimo Jack Nicholson, The Trip foi arrasado pela crítica. Mas a bilheteria rendeu o suficiente para permitir ao trio investir no próximo projeto. Sem Destino, dirigido por Dennis Hopper, arrecadou mais de 50 milhões de dólares, ganhou o prêmio de melhor filme de diretor estreante em Cannes e fez os estúdios de Hollywood procurarem roteiros com conteúdo subcultural. Mas de todas as indústrias que exploravam o universo hippie, a da música foi a mais promissora. Nascida diretamente da cultura jovem e expressando todos os anseios e aspirações dessa geração, o rock, o acid rock em particular, gerou um crescimento sem precedentes no ramo musical. Em 1968, a indústria da música faturou 100 milhões de dólares pela primeira vez na história. O comparecimento aos shows ao vivo também aumentou. Começando com o Monterey Pop Festival no verão de 1967, concertos de rock ao ar livre atraíam um público cada vez maior de hippies hardcore e os chamados plastic hippies que gostavam de participar dos acontecimentos. Após promover uma bem-sucedida série de eventos musicais em Miami, o empresário Michael Lang traçou planos para um show em Nova York. Desde o início, o Festival Woodstock de Música e Arte criou conflitos com os residentes locais de direita.
They became very unfair.
Após 11 horas, Lang encontrou o tão sonhado local para o evento na pequena cidade de Bethel, Nova York. Entretanto, mais problemas surgiriam do outro lado da fronteira cultural.
A boyfriend of mine and I went up about a week before Woodstock started. The workers during the day would put up the fences, and every night people would unscrew all the work that they had done. Because they wanted to keep it open because they knew that thousands of people were going to show up.
A lot of people said they came up the thruway and it took over 12 hours to get there from New York City. And it was the first time ever, and never since, that the New York State Thruway was closed. Nobody was ready for it. And shortly after they announced that this was going to be a free concert because people had tickets, a lot of people had tickets, but there were no fences or anything, and it just filled up quickly. Before you knew it, there was a city there. It was quite shocking. Within hours, all of the stores reported that they were sold out of everything.
Logo, comida, água potável e outros bens de consumo estavam com os estoques perigosamente baixos. Estima-se que 500 mil cachorros-quentes tenham sido consumidos somente no primeiro dia. O serviço médico também era precário. Havia aproximadamente 22 mil pessoas para cada médico. Glenn Josp, um médico residente na época, foi recrutado para servir no local.
I went up there at the party and had my cowboy hat on and I was sitting there enjoying music. The head physician, he was shouting, so does anybody have any IV Valium? Someone was having a seizure. I said, I have IV Valium. And he said, who are you? And 15 minutes later, I was in a helicopter. Oh, and my parents were sitting on the lawn. We didn't know what was happening. They saw I got out of the helicopter. I walked past them, went into the bungalow. I grabbed my doctor's bag, and I said, I'll see you in 3 days.
No one had really thought, besides the first aid station, about what's going to happen if we got totally landlocked, which is what happened, and people began getting sick. Someone got up and made an announcement saying, anybody who took the blue acid, it was bad acid, so you might get sick. Well, half the crowd who had taken acid probably did not remember what color the acid was that they had taken, and people began panicking, thinking that they had taken something really bad.
Mau planejamento, ácido ruim e mau tempo. Por um período de 3 horas, chuvas torrenciais encharcaram o público. Lang e seus associados temiam que a multidão faminta e ensopada se revoltasse. O que salvou o dia e talvez a integridade física deles foi a música. Lang havia contratado algumas das bandas mais famosas, Jefferson Airplane, The Who e Janis Joplin. Ofereceram a Jimi Hendrix o dobro do cachê habitual para garantir a sua presença.
Once the music began, I felt we were okay for the weekend.
Um momento crítico ocorreu quando o hippie Abe Hoffman, sob a influência de LSD, subiu ao palco durante a apresentação do The Who.
I don't think Townsend had any idea what he was doing there, maybe even who he was, or who knows what would happen, and he hit him on the head, I believe, with his guitar, and smashed the guitar.
A plateia vibrou. Eles não queriam saber do confronto político que dividia o mundo fora de Woodstock. As autoridades locais nada fizeram.
Even the police, the state troopers, didn't hassle us. They were smoking grass with us, they were playing around and friendly and all of that.
To see that many people together in total harmony, and I haven't seen anything like that before or after.
It was sort of like that play Hair, you know, when Jupiter aligns with Mars. Everything came together at one time, quite by accident, if you believe that an accident like that could happen. And this was the accumulation before we headed into the 70s, before we hit disco, you know? This was our last message to the earth, was that peace.
Mesmo com participação nas vendas de filmes e álbuns, o Festival de Woodstock só se tornaria rentável 20 anos depois. O evento pode ter sido mais uma tentativa de explorar o universo hippie, mas no final o dinheiro não foi a essência de Woodstock.
We had a chance to pick ourselves up by our collective bootstraps and be amazing together. And we did just that. It was a chance for us to show the whole world how it could be if we ran the show.
De repente, no momento em que a América estava mais dividida, o sonho hippie de um mundo harmonioso e pacífico parecia próximo. Mas no mesmo instante, 4.800 quilômetros a oeste dali, os eventos que se desenrolavam colocariam esse sonho permanentemente fora de alcance. Em agosto de 1969, enquanto a plateia do Festival de Woodstock mostrava ao estado de Nova York o poder do amor, a Califórnia sofria com o terror. Em uma suntuosa mansão de Beverly Hills, os corpos lacerados de Sharon Tate, atriz e esposa do diretor Roman Polanski, e de 4 outras pessoas foram encontrados. Tate, grávida de 8 meses, fora esfaqueada 16 vezes. Em outubro, a polícia deteve o homem que supostamente estaria por trás dos homicídios e de vários outros crimes horrendos. O compositor, líder comunitário e antigo morador de Haight-Ashbury, Charles Manson. A imprensa conservadora saiu a campo.
This is what happens if you have free love and take drugs, and you finish up crawling into middle-class people's houses and killing them, on the orders of some drug-crazed hippie.
From a kind of conservative media perspective, it's sort of, I told you so, this is what the 60s are about.
A comunidade hippie, cada vez mais paranoica em função da guerra camuflada do governo contra a subcultura, suspeitava de armação. Mas, à medida que as evidências surgiam, mesmo os mais duros teóricos da conspiração tiveram de aceitar a verdade. Um hippie de cabelos compridos poderia ser um homicida psicótico. Logo após os assassinatos de Manson, ocorreu outra catástrofe subcultural. O show gratuito dos Rolling Stones em Ormond Racetrack, Califórnia, era cotado como o Woodstock da costa oeste. Mas transformou-se em um culto ao ódio quando um negro foi esfaqueado até a morte pelas pessoas contratadas para manter a segurança, os Hells Angels.
The reason we have society is that, as Jefferson put it, it's a great reflection on human nature. That if men really could live together in harmony without government, without the social order, they would have been doing it for all these millennia that there have been men. It was finally a very fundamental error that the hippies and those around them made in the 60s, that if we would all just live naturally, everything would be fine.
Além da pretensiosa autoimagem, o movimento perdia também seus heróis. Em 17 de abril de 1970, Paul McCartney anunciou que os Beatles, a banda que ajudara a levar os valores hippies para o mundo, acabaram. Outros ícones hippies deixaram os palcos de maneira menos calculada. No outono de 1970, as drogas ceifaram as vidas de duas mega-estrelas hippies, Jimi Hendrix e Janis Joplin. Jim Morrison morreria logo depois.
We lost so many great people, and to think of what they could have been doing today, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Brian Jones, it goes on and on. That's a disappointment.
Uma grande era da música popular chegava ao fim, assim como a guerra indesejada. Em julho de 1969, as tropas americanas começaram a retornar do Vietnã. Desiludidos, sem heróis e sem uma guerra para alimentar a causa, era o momento para muitos dos que participaram do movimento retornarem para o lugar de onde vieram.
So much happened to people who lived through those years. It's an unforgettable time for people. They wouldn't trade it for anything, but a lot happened and people got burnt out by the end of it.
I don't know if the hippies sowed their own destruction so much as that they tried to do something impossible. If you think you're going to come up with a totally new way to live and then everything's going to be fine, you're going to be disappointed.
Após 5 conturbados anos, os hippies, o maior fenômeno subcultural da história dos Estados Unidos, desapareceram. Mas nem todos. Em 22 de abril de 1970, 20 milhões de pessoas reuniram-se em várias cidades da nação para celebrar o Dia da Terra. O meio ambiente tornou-se oficialmente uma preocupação nacional. Concebido em São Francisco, a cidade natal dos hippies, o Dia da Terra originou-se do movimento de volta à Terra, no final dos anos 60, e suas previsões sobre um ecossistema apocalíptico. A bilionária indústria de alimentos naturais, o universo de diferentes estilos de vida, as medicinas alternativas. Os movimentos de liberação das mulheres e dos gays também devem muito aos hippies e à sua reavaliação radical das prioridades americanas.
People had choices available to them as individuals and groups of people that were not there before. The cultural space was opened irrevocably, would never be closed up again.
It did help women have a voice in things. Not in a feminist way, not in an isolationist way, but as human beings participating and equal.
Mas, ao combater a repressão e a submissão, os hippies também abriram uma caixa de Pandora cheia de maus comportamentos. À medida que a revolução sexual ganhava força, os divórcios aumentavam. Em 1976, o número de casamentos que acabou em divórcio chegou a 50%, o dobro de 1958. As drogas perderam a conotação radical e penetraram mais fundo na sociedade americana. Em 1979, 70% dos jovens entre 18 e 25 anos admitiram ter usado drogas ilegais. Os anos 70 chegaram ao fim sob forte influência dos hippies.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear
that I will
Mesmo a eleição de um antigo adversário dos hippies para a Casa Branca em 1980 não pôde apagar todas as mudanças semeadas por eles na cultura americana. Mas, ironicamente, a área onde os hippies teriam o maior impacto no futuro do planeta não seria a cultural, e sim a tecnológica. Em abril de 1977, Steve Jobs e o parceiro Steve Wozniak apresentaram o Apple II, o primeiro computador pessoal comercialmente viável.
We were so influenced by the People's Computer Company in Menlo Park, the same area that the hippie thought had come from. The whole hippie thinking was that basically the big, wealthy power structure should be undone. We want to turn the balance over, and we want to make the small individuals more important. And it was basically bringing this power, this mastery of their own universe away from the powers that be, the huge, big, rich corporations. All the big companies said this is really going to go nowhere. Steve Jobs was much more a hippie than I was too. I mean, he really dressed in the sandals and ate seeds, and he would fly over to India to bathe in the Ganges River and try to get closer to this social phenomena of the world, but he was also dedicated at the same time to have a very big, successful life and a successful company someday.
Somehow we're putting a ding into the universe. I see these things in schools and kids growing up learning how to use them, and I see more and more of these personal computers being applied to everyday life situations.
O computador pessoal revolucionou o modo como o mundo trabalhava. Então surgiu uma tecnologia ainda mais surpreendente, a internet, criada em parte por outro hippie high-tech, Stewart Brand. Antigo protegido de Ken Casey, Brand foi a mola motriz por trás do catálogo terrestre, a bíblia do movimento da comunicação do final dos anos 60 e início dos 70. Nos anos 80 e 90, ele foi essencial na criação do modelo que levou ao World Wide Web.
What the internet does is it empowers individuals. It takes away the power of mediating institutions and puts it all in the hands of people. And that, in many ways, is a logical outgrowth of the philosophy and the ideals of the hippie movement.
No coração do experimento americano havia uma busca pela utopia. Um lugar onde as pessoas viveriam em harmonia, valorizando a liberdade para cumprir seus destinos. Os hippies buscaram essa utopia através da música, das drogas, da natureza e do amor. Talvez o fracasso fosse inevitável. Mas a rejeição das normas e regras fez uma geração reavaliar seus valores, abriu as portas para um universo de produtos e negócios inovadores e mostrou a uma nação controlada pelas regras e pela opressão que a busca da felicidade foi e sempre será uma parte vital do sonho americano.
When I think of American society today, when you look at our attitudes towards so many things, sort of the liberalization of our values, our social values, whether you embrace them or not, I think you have to accept that we all have a little bit of hippie in us. And in that way, I think ultimately the hippies triumphed.